Alright, party people. Oh man. I'm still gonna be clearing my throat, coughing and stuff. Apologies. A topic came to mind. What it's like having trans friends. Now it's something that I don't know if I've ever really had to try to explain or talk about before. So what it's like having trans friends. So yeah, after recording about that legislation piece, I was thinking more and more about my trans friends, not so much about drag or things like that, but queer culture in general, and just, I kind of got to thinking, what it's like being a queer person, what it's like, having trans friends, or knowing trans people, being around trans people in general, what it's like. I'm trying to think who was the first trans person that I knew was trans and was out as trans. I remember the first gay person I knew. I don't know if these two people are still living. So I don't really, this person was completely openly out, so I feel like I'm not like outing them, because they were completely out. So the reason why I'm saying that is because the Adventist community is small, and even being in LA, it's possible to identify people, but this is way back. I must have been 5 years old or so. There was this guy, younger looking. I was like 5, so I don't know how old he was. He was probably, let's say, 21 or so. Blonde hair. I don't know if it was naturally blonde, but blonde hair. It wasn't really long hair, but blonde hair. And there was this old lady, like, I don't remember when she passed, but she's old. Like, she drove this little old rabbit, like a tan rabbit. Her name was Rosie, and she used to always come to my parents' car, like, after church, and give me those those candies that are, like, wrapped in that, like, strawberry-looking wrapper. It's, like, a red base, and like the top of it is like green, and they're kind of like twisted in that like wax or plasticky paper, and they have it's a hard strawberry flavored candy that's filled with like this little strawberry jelly or liquid, or like it's like a soft strawberry candy inside this hard candy. And when they would get old or like punctured, they would kind of like leak out, but you could still eat it because it's like hard candy. It's just sugar. So she would always give us those candies. She'd have pineapple ones, I think. I remember specifically strawberry ones because they were popular back then in like the 80s, 90s. I haven't seen those types of candies in years, but they were like some cheap candy that everybody, I don't know, a lot of adults seem to have them. My dad used to bring them home from work sometimes. Like, I don't know where. I've never even seen like a bag of them. I've just seen people have them in their pockets and give them out to people and stuff when I was a kid. So I got candies from her. Like, she would come up to me and my brother and be like, do you want a color? And she would always give us candies and say how we're sweet kids and stuff. And she was either a Caucasian or Latina lady, I don't recall. But this guy Ken lived with her. And he was younger than her. Like, she was old when I was like 5. She was already like kind of like back a little, bent over, completely gray. I think she had a cane and wore those like old lady kind of house coat kind of sweaters and like those old women's like nursing shoes. And she was old. So and I specifically remember, I don't know if it was my parents or some other people at church being like, you know, I guess Rosie found out that Ken was gay or something. And I don't know how I got wind of this. Like, I must have been around adults talking about it or in some kind of space where somebody was mentioning it. And I kind of just knew by the way they were talking about it that, like, they weren't happy about it. And I kind of knew what they meant, even though I don't know how I ever found out. Like, I never remember specifically asking somebody, what does gay mean? But I remember knowing, even at that age, like, what they meant when they were saying, oh, Ken's gay. And I was like, oh, you know, like, people aren't supposed to know that about him. Like, in my head, I was kind of like, that's something that people aren't supposed to, like, know or find out. Not necessarily that he's not supposed to be, but that it's just one of those things that's like, you know, if people find out, they're gonna be like unhappy with you about it. So I must have been 5 because we weren't living in Missouri, we were living in LA. And yeah, going to this little church on Saturdays. And Rosie and Ken, they were like housemates. Like, she let Ken live with her. And, you know, I think I feel like I'm gonna kick myself if I'm wrong with this story, but I think he contracted HIV. I think he got AIDS, and I think he passed away from that. Now, I can't say 110% sure because I was like very young, and there's only a couple people I could probably ask about this to see if it was accurate. But I don't think so. I don't think there's a lot of people who I could ask. There's one friend that I could ask, but I don't think there's a lot of people I could ask. So I'm trying to think. The first trans person I knew, the first drag queen I learned about was RuPaul. Because I remember when that song, I don't know the name of it, but that You Better Work song, when it was like Cover Girl or whatever it's called, when it was popular, like, we used to watch MTV hits in the morning, like MTV, BET. We used to watch those kind of hits in the morning before school, while we were kind of like packing our bags and like getting ready. There was like a little bit of downtime, and so we would watch that. And so we knew when that show was over, it was time to start getting in the car. And so we would usually hurry up to get ready so we could like watch whatever was the number one or whatever. And so around the time when that was number one, my mom was like, oh yeah, RuPaul, you guys know, right, that RuPaul's a drag queen. And I was like, what's that? He's like, you know, it's a man. And I was like, oh, okay. And like, I was just like, cool, you know, like, I didn't think much of it. I was like, I've never really seen anybody do that before. And I guess the first friends I ever had that did like maybe like cross-dressing for fun, there was a kid that's, I think he's When I was in 5th grade, he was in kindergarten, I'm pretty sure. But I don't know, because I remember he would go in the preschool room and try on dresses and heels and wigs and all this kind of stuff. I really don't know, though. I really don't know who is, who isn't. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think if there's anybody who specifically comes to mind. I really gotta think this through. Alright, did a little change of location there. I feel a lot more comfortable talking about these things outside of the house, when I'm in my car or driving around town or just not in the house. Unless it's early in the morning when I know nobody can like overhear me. But yeah, that's the reality of things. Like, I don't know. We're not even gonna get into like the toxic bullshit of my household, but it could be worse. I'll just put it that way. It's not. I'm not like at risk in any way, but it's still like, you know, very religious family and all. The whole nine. We don't need to get into it, but yeah. So Ken and Rosie. Rosie wasn't queer as far as I know. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of people that were never out when I was young. I'm trying to think though, the first trans person I knew, like that, the friend that I know that, you know, when I was in 5th grade and they were in kindergarten, they do drag, in San Francisco. I don't know to what level, like, I don't know, like, anything about their performances, anything like that. Too much, not too much detail about all that, but I do know, I do kind of know, you know, how they are. Like, I do kind of know what they do. And I just want to say, like, I've never had a negative experience with my trans friends, a negative experience dating trans people. As far as the trans people themselves, I mean, I've never really had a negative experience. Only once, I would say, because the person was kind of like way more into substances and more into substances than they were ready to kind of like develop anything along with me. So that was kind of like something that I didn't have a lot of patience for. But I I don't know. I'm trying to think. Maybe the first trans person I knew was when I was older. I knew a lot of like masc females, queer males. I say queer, like LGBT people, like everyone kind of identified however they identified. I don't know. There's a friend that I know that is trans that I don't know how long they identified as trans for. And I want to say that person is the first person I knew that was trans, but maybe I didn't know they were trans back then. I mean, they are still. It's not. It didn't change, but nothing changed about that. But I was not aware of it. I was not informed or aware or knowledgeable about it. I don't know if there are other friends I've had that are trans from my youth. I'm trying to think if there are any. Um, uh, like I've known people that were friends of friends, but I'm trying to think if I actually, because I knew a lot of freaking people. It's just, I don't know if I ever knew anybody that was like, I have their number, I've got their email, Facebook, MySpace, whatever, like, and it's someone that was either like in my class or in my church friend groups, or even someone that was at the church where I went. There were people at churches that I went to uh, before where there were trans people there. Um, but, and I don't know if I, like, when I first knew about trans people, like, I feel like there was something in the class, I think our health class at the religious school didn't teach anything about homosexuality, gay, lesbian, straight, bi, trans, nothing. Intersex, nothing. I think they only taught about homophobia for sure. They taught about homophobia. That's for sure. I don't remember if they taught anything. Like I remember being younger and my mom using words like transvestite. That's a term that I don't hear though. Like, and I feel like that term was maybe used by my mom, maybe some aunts, saying the term transvestite about people that were I I don't know, like, because they weren't necessarily drag performers, but it was like maybe like questionable, like would this person get like a gender related surgery? And so I feel like it was almost like a joke, like kind of like in a joking way. I'd heard like my mom and maybe like some aunts say stuff about like, oh, they're a transvestite, and it was usually related to like entertainers, so like singers, actors, like people who maybe didn't look exactly like, like people like the RuPauls, the Sinead O'Connors, the Grace Jones, the people that maybe like a bald woman or a man with a skirt and things like that. But it wasn't necessarily like they were trans, or it wasn't they were wearing drag, or they're gay. It was like I knew that those were different things, but the way I think that was the first exposure I had to it was probably at a young age with my parent, not both my parents, just my mom and her sisters, like maybe two or three of them, laughing about like transvestites for some reason or another, and I don't know how it came up. It was probably like MTV was on in the background, or like some kind of other type of show like Ricky Lake or something like that, and there was some talk about transvestites or something. It was more like a laughable, like, look at these kind of freaks kind of thing. It was never like, this is an actual identity, or like, this is actually like a person's, like, how they are. It was more like, oh, they're doing this. Like, they almost took it on like, oh, they're doing this just like the people who are like the street performers that like eat fire, or like the acrobats that like bend and twist in like a pretzel, or like more for like a performance nature of things. Like they're playing with their gender for like performance reasons. And so that's kind of initially what I kind of thought transvestite meant. And I thought that maybe people get surgeries to have that happen, because that's the context that I overheard family members as a kid. You know, I was like 5 or so, 6, 7. Hearing my mom and aunts kind of joking about stuff like that. They'd be like in the kitchen cooking dinner or whatever, and everybody's kind of pitching in, peeling potatoes, whatever, playing card games. Skip Bo is a big one, and like some other card games, like big card game family, domino, stuff like that. Um, so we would play like that. Uh, like they not we would play like that, but they would say stuff like that, and I don't think I ever knew what it meant, but like the school where I went, you wouldn't be running around saying things like transvestite. Like it was kind of one of those terms I never really fully understood what it meant. Um, and I never fully understood what other people meant, like when they said it. And I think when I first started learning about trans people, I was not certain about the difference between transvestite and transsexual. And I probably didn't learn that, in all honesty, until I want to say college or maybe high school, probably community college. But I really don't remember. Like, I really don't remember. Um, but yeah, the first trans friend I ever had was someone who I've known for a very long time. Like, since I was in, like, 7th or 8th grade or so. Um, um, Now there are a lot of people that I know now that are trans. Um uh I've definitely talked online to a lot of trans people. Um had crushes on plenty of them. Dated a few. Uh I don't know. I'm trying to think. I feel like the first trans friend I had that I knew was trans was within the last 10 years. Um, Maybe 12 years or so. Because I think in grad school, I think I had a trans friend in grad school. Um, but I don't remember much, honestly, because um, yeah, I don't know what happened to them. Like I don't know. We just lost touch with each other, and I wasn't really like out really back then. Like not when I was in LA. I wasn't really too out until I moved to San Diego, honestly, because I just didn't feel like my surroundings in LA were really suitable for that. And I wasn't very independent. You know, I didn't have my own income. I wasn't independent enough. Like I was like, I gotta wait till I'm like independent enough so that none of this comes back and bites me in the ass, you know. Like I need to make sure that that I'm taken care of, you know, without having to risk anything. Um but there's definitely a lot that I noticed I put up with just for that freedom. You know, that's a big reason why I didn't move back to LA earlier, a big reason why I didn't do a lot of things, you know, stay in LA, avoid working at a dead end job, you know, avoid living with crazy ass roommates, like avoid living in certain places to avoid having roommates. I mean, Jesus, you know, just because of the freedom I got there in San Diego to just kind of be who I am without anybody saying a thing, And if they did, it was like, what difference does it make to me? It's not going to ruin my life at all. Um, so yeah, that was one thing. Uh, was having a friend in grad school that I lost contact with. I don't really think there's too much I can really share about that person though, because I really just don't think I can. Not in a bad way. It's just there's no way of um, like protecting this person, like at all, without like fully outing them. Like there's no way. So I really just can't say much. I can just say grad school, LA. That could be freaking anybody. And so yeah, that was a struggle. Just losing contact was a struggle. Just because of how and why, but it wasn't anything on my end. Nothing, like, there was no bad blood. Like, nothing was like that. It was just, they just kind of cut ties with everybody. So there's that. There was so I would say, if I just fast forward to now, because that's easier to do, honestly. I've got quite a handful of trans friends. I would say the first trans person I dated, the first trans person I was interested in, it was not a mutual interest. I was interested, they were not. But we were friends, got along. Ended up just not living anywhere near one another, and just kind of just stopped hanging out. But I mean, they're a person I could probably hit up whenever, in all honesty, but I just don't, because it's a little awkward on my end, so I just don't. They don't associate with anybody that I know anymore. So I don't know anything about what they're up to. Don't have them on social media, nothing. Like, I've got an old number, I'm not even sure if it still works. I don't really talk to them much, and that's fine, we just kind of grew in different directions, and that's fine. It was just we just naturally got out of contact. And I feel like that's the best way. When things just naturally run their course, it's like, what can be said about that? So we naturally went our separate ways. No animosity, nothing. There was a friend. Let me see. There's a friend who, I'm trying to think. There's a friend who I didn't know was that I didn't know identified as trans, and I'm pretty sure they never mentioned it, and I'm pretty sure they weren't always identifying that way, or maybe they weren't always out. I do recall some conversations where they mentioned something about a bathroom scenario that happened to them. And I kind of made some comments, some gender comments, because they never mentioned being trans, and the way they were talking about that story was kind of like, the way they identified themselves, and like initially talked about themselves, like there was never any mention of trans, non-binary, pronouns, nothing along those lines. Do I notice pronouns now? Yes. And that's fine. I'm not saying people need to or have to, but it's um yeah. Um the first person I ever dated that was trans was nice, very tall. Um no. No. The first person was actually very short. Nice. Um and just kind. Um I maybe didn't have the best of communication skills. I think, I mean, I was pretty into them, but I feel like they weren't too assertive, and I was not listening. Like, I wasn't reading into things. So they were like really passive with things. Um, and I know why. Like, I understand why. Like, but say, for example, you know, we were at a club once, and well, more than once, but once, and at Rich's in San Diego, and it was a Thursday night. This was ages ago, and I chose Thursday night because I'm like, oh, it's ladies' night. And I don't know if that was offensive, but I just said I like to go on Thursday night because it's ladies' night. Like, it wasn't like, you know, like you were born a female. That's not what I was getting at. It was more so, you know, can we meet on this night? And I don't know. I could go back through the messages probably and figure out what I said. But basically, I believe I kind of was like, let's meet here and then go there. And they're like, cool. I've never been to any of these like queer spaces. And I was like, cool. I get to show a queer person a queer environment and have fun. And I was kind of like, what kind of music do you like more? R&B, hip hop, like EDM, like dance music, like, kind of like pop remixes kind of stuff. And they're like, yeah, like kind of like EDM and that kind of stuff. So I'm like, all right, let's go to that side. But that is a bigger dance floor, and people tend to like the R&B more. Usually on ladies' night, for some reason, the R&B side would fill in a lot, and then the other side wouldn't, like the EDM side wouldn't. And so, you know, we would go to, I was like, let's go to the EDM side, and I was kind of into dancing and stuff, so we were like dancing a little bit, and they were like, you know, something about like, if you want to get a drink, like they were saying they wanted. I drove, so I was like, I'm not drinking that much. I think I had one drink because we went out to dinner before, and I think I had one drink, and I was like, but I was really quiet that night. I remember, and then like, yeah, and that's something that I think a lot of people don't really know about me, is like, when I get really comfortable, I can get really quiet. It doesn't mean I'm not having fun. It doesn't mean I'm not having a good time. Usually just means I'm comfortable just being in my own head when I'm around you, and just being in the moment and not really worrying about, like, I don't worry when I'm around you. I'm not worrying about what you're thinking about me. Nothing. Like, that's usually what that means when I'm just like quiet all the time. Because eventually I do run out of stuff to say, so I just don't try to fill the space. And I was kind of having one of those nights. I remember I was like, damn, I wish I was a little more social tonight, but I'm not. So it was kind of nice that we went to the club, and they were like, oh, I didn't, I want you to, I was gonna get a drink, but I want you to, I don't want you to have to wait for me. And I was kind of like what do you mean? Like, you don't want me to have to wait? You know, it's like they wanted to get a drink, but, and so I kind of took that as well. They mentioned it a couple times, and I was kind of like, now I would have been like, no, it's fine, but like back then I was kind of just uh, like they're not really pushing that they want to drink, and I was kind of into dancing, and so I didn't really say anything. And then they're like, do you want to go to the other side? It's okay if you want to go to the other room. Because we were like the only ones on the dance floor, pretty much. Maybe two other people, but it's just us, pretty much. So I think they were like, I want to go to the other side, because there's more people in there, and this is awkward and uncomfortable kind of thing. So I think there were like things like that where I was just like completely, like there were like moments like that where it was like a little bit passive for me. Like it's kind of like, I need somebody, just tell me what you need. I can't do the whole like, oh, I think this. It's like I wasn't very like attuned to this person too much. Like I would be nervous, like not necessarily like they didn't make me nervous, but I was just nervous. Like anytime I would be in a situation that's like, oh, we're calling this a date, I would be nervous. It's like if we're just like meeting up and hanging out, I really don't care. But the second you call it a date, I'm like, oh shit, like the pressure's on kind of thing. And so that's kind of why I was kind of like not functional, very socially functional. And so we start talking and we start interacting, and it just kind of kept going that way. Like the like I wasn't latching on to the cues of like when this person kind of suggests something, that means that's what they want to do. So I just ignored it when they suggested things because they weren't very direct or straightforward. And to me, I was just kind of like, oh, you know, they mentioned that they want to do these things, but I was never like, oh yeah, let's go do it. I was usually like, well, like, okay, like I just wasn't very tuned into the situation. And on my end, I'm pretty sure that's why things didn't continue, but that was never explicitly told to me. Like, I don't really know for sure. We just kind of decided that, we weren't going to take things further to, some other um, more solid level. It was kind of like, yeah, if I see you around town, I see you. If I hit you up, I hit you up. And we saw each other around town and hit each other up a little less and a little less and a little less until it just kind of fizzled. And there were points where we were dating other people too, and we would go out on dates, and like we just didn't really date too often. I don't know how long that lasted. I want to say maybe like a year. Like I don't really know. Like honestly, it's hard for me to really tell. I'm not gonna go through like every single trans person that I dated in every single date, but like, friends, yeah, I want to say probably middle school was the first friend I had, but I don't know if they were out then. I don't really know. And so I can't really speak to that because it's uh it's another setting I don't really know if I can really talk about. Um I don't want to actually. And then there's this other, like not in a bad way, I just don't want to. Like I have every right to not want to talk about something. There was a um um I'm trying to think if there was A different trans friend. I'll start getting into more recent examples pretty soon, but one of my trans friends, I didn't know they were trans, but they told me like a little after, we've been having a conversation and a group of friends, and they kind of revealed to me that they're trans, and I was like, cool, like I didn't really say anything about it. I was kind of like, cool. But I tried to be friendly, and we hung out and stuff. Like, we hung out maybe 2-3 times after that, and kind of parted, went a little bit separate ways. This was a friend of a friend. This person is doing really well. They got a speaking engagement at the at one of the Trans Day of Visibility events, and they're definitely representative of the Latinx and QPOC community. Very visible online, very visible in person, very visible in the local community. We don't really talk that much, but I'm pretty sure we're going to see each other around. At the least, we'll probably see each other at Pride events and things. I there's a there's a there's a trans friend I have where not too long ago, we went to a rave. Surprise, surprise. Yeah, we went to a rave, and they kind of mentioned, there were maybe 3 occurrences that I feel happened due to hanging out with a trans person, hanging out with my trans friend, this trans friend. And so one situation was just this ultra friendly lady talking to our group. I think we looked gay. I mean, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like when I don't know what people think, but it's like when I'm in my element with my non-straight friends and with my friends that kind of like have a lot of non-conforming preferences and identities and styles to them. I mean, I think it just screams just like rainbows and queer as we're walking around. Like, anyone who would think otherwise, I feel like they would not assume, oh, this is a straight group of people. Like, there's not a lot of straight looking about us. Like, almost every single person, you'd probably have to do like a little bit of a double take and be like, all right, like, which ones are boys, which ones are girls, kind of thing. Like, between the clothing styles and the haircuts and the builds and, just kind of how people prefer to dress, it's like something's different here, and so I think just that alone, like hanging out with a crew like that in like a musical environment, and you have a lot of people who are kind of like, it's a little bit a part of the culture. Not always. I'm not saying everybody does substances, or that you must, or that you have to, or that you should, or that you need to experiment. To each their own. I know plenty of quite sober people that are not into like hardly anything at all. They're just there for the music, and that's fine. I am not one of those people, but a lot of people are. But yeah, there are definitely people who do shrooms and who do, ecstasy and all kinds of things. Uh, these types of things sometimes make people a little open-minded to different types of people, to diversity and such. So I think that could have maybe been the situation with this lady that was talking to our group. She just was really friendly. Like, it's almost like I would have thought that someone else I was with knew her, like the way she was talking to us. I was just like, oh, like, okay. Like, maybe she's like, maybe she knows one of them. And like, nah, she didn't. She just wanted to talk about gay stuff. And just came right up and started talking about, you know, I need to be near that person and like all. I'm like, okay, like, and then someone else at the same event, was kind of like complimenting my friend's hair and like, using they them pronouns, and I was kind of like, all right, they're kind of like putting it on, over here, you know and so yeah. And then there was a dude who was aggressive, went and started ruffling through my friend's hair and was a complete asshole. And we kind of stood up, like we weren't standing, but we stood up at a certain point. I stood up first, I think, just to be like, you need to back off, like keep your hands to yourself. Like, I don't remember what I said, but it was somewhere along the lines of like, you don't need to be touching people, because they were like trying to like massage my friend's shoulders and like touching my friend's shoulders and hair and stuff like that. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, who does this, And I think it was some, I don't know. I mean, best case scenario, this person was on drugs and wasn't aware of what they were doing, but I don't buy that. I think they were definitely, even if they were on something, I think this was from a place of some other kind of place. Like, this was coming from some other kind of place. Because it's like, they weren't doing that to other people. They just singled this person out. I think for gender-related reasons. Because of how they presented, because of how they looked. They knew, and then to have 3 people yelling in your face to stop and still not really stopping, it's like, what are you trying to have happen? And I just remember when my friends were just screaming and standing there screaming at this person, just like cussing him out and stuff. And I'm standing there just looking this guy in the eyes, just like dead, just like you fucked up, buddy, kind of thing. Like, and I'm just like just do it. Like, in my head, I'm just like, just do it one more time, like I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't had so much weed in my system. I probably honestly would have hit somebody, like him. I probably would have. I don't like people messing with my friends. And this took a while to get this guy to back off. Like, we're in a crowded festival full of people. Nobody else stands up to like try to like help. And there's this idiot guy that's acting like this, he's just acting like a jerk. I think he just did it because I don't hate men, but I think he just did it because he's a man and he knew he's bigger and stronger than us, and he could probably do whatever he wanted. I mean, this is daytime. The sun hadn't set yet, so it was like daylight. But that was not even the least comfortable situation I've ever had with a trans person, but that was very recent and very uncomfortable and very uncalled for this dude to be acting like this. But I don't think he would have done it if it was anyone else. I didn't see him walking around touching any other people. There were plenty of men with haircuts that were similar. You know, he didn't seem to have any need to be touching them. I just think it was a weird thing, and it was, you know, it. I don't know. I didn't really hear my friend saying like, "Okay, stop doing that," and I was like watching the DJs for a while, so like, I didn't really hear anybody say like, "Oh, stop doing that," kind of thing. But once I kind of like tuned into what was going on with what he was doing, and I am kind of often on heightened alert when I'm with my trans friends. I just am, because I just know to be, you know. I'm on hyper alert when I'm with my black friends. That's just how I am. Like, I know to like stay a little more attuned to my environment, and don't just don't just kind of let your mind go and, you know, just kind of get into the flow of things. Like, you kind of got to keep one eye open, you know, and I kind of know that. So I kind of do have like a mode that I switch on, and that mode had been switched on all day. And I don't know. I don't want to talk about it too much, but basically that was pretty recent. Um, so basically I would say what it's like having trans friends, you know, overall, I mean, I've talked about this before, but like overall, um, I'm not, see, I don't want this to come across like I'm saying like, oh, poor me, you know, experiencing secondhand like discrimination and things. Or poor me, you know, experiencing these weird kind of like dynamics socially, because, you know, like there's a little bit of social kind of like expectations and what. Oh, poor me. I'm not trying to say that. And I'm not trying to say, you know, that it's a burden. I'm not trying to say that at all. I'm just trying to say, you know, when I'm with my trans friends, I have that switch on. You know, that switch is on. I'm a little hyper vigilant, a little bit, you know, and I think it's a must, you know. Um, I think, like, not in a way where I'm like burdened, but I do think, you know, when I do make plans with trans friends, I try to think about them, too, and I try to think about the situation that they're in. I try to think about them, their experiences, their life, their lifestyle. Um, I mean, the more I know a person, the more I can kind of like tell kind of like what they may or may not need. But overall, things that I look out for are bathroom situations, comfort situations, as far as um, you know, are they going to be out of their comfort zone? Is there some weird thing about this space that I'm inviting this person to share that is going to be a turn off, you know, that's going to put them off, that's going to turn them off, that's going to make them uncomfortable or want to leave early or leave. And it's okay if people want to leave early. I am never going to be like, oh, like, you, like, something happened and you should have to stay. Hell no. You know, but I'm very protective of my friends, and, you know, I would say when it comes to the trans friends, that's like a basic one, just the bathrooms. I'm a little particular. I don't know. I feel like I need to know people really good. And I have a group of friends in San Diego that, like, I think about my dating life. If I were dating a trans person and got into a relationship with a trans person, there's a group of friends I have in San Diego where that would be fine. And there's another person who's a close friend that it would be fine. And that's, I want to, maybe another friend I haven't, maybe two friends in LA I have where that would be fine. Probably my siblings. I mean, my siblings aren't prejudiced, they're fine with everything. But yeah, nobody else in my family or friend groups, other than maybe 3 friends and my San Diego crew, would I be okay dating a trans person and welcoming that person to, come hang out with me and either one of these 3 people or my San Diego crew. And that's saying a lot, because I know a lot more people than that. And it's pretty sad to say, but it's pretty true too. I don't really know a lot of people that I could say for sure that I could trust that they weren't going to say some dumbass thing or ask some stupid ass question or be, discriminatory in some way. I mean, I have a friend that was kind of open-minded, tried to be open-minded just because I was. And so they were like, I'm trying to follow your lead kind of thing. And so they would be stumbling over stuff and saying kind of the wrong things and not being too politically correct with things. And, there were some times where I had to just jump in and interrupt them and completely change the subject because I'm like, oh shit, I know where this is going. I just was like, fuck, like, like just change the subject kind of thing. Like, like, hey, did anybody watch the Lakers? Like, oh my god, like I don't want to go down this road, this route. But they've come around. And I think a lot of people will come around. But I feel like one thing I notice is when people don't know who's trans around them, they feel like they can say whatever they want to say or do whatever they want to do. They think they're amongst their own. I think people know how I feel. I mean, I would say the group of people I've had the most trouble with would probably be the church people I grew up with. I don't want to say it's all church people, but a specific community of people I grew up with in LA. They're probably the most impacting on my life. Even now, because their parents are friends with my parents, and so it's like this whole entangled mess. But we all grew up together, so I would say those people were the most impacting in my life. And I'd say, I talk a lot systemically about, white privilege. But usually when I'm saying, I will to my friends, who, I'm aware that when I probably don't sound very, educated or smart or anything when I'm, talking about, oh, a white person said this or did that or whatever, um, or white people in general. Usually, when I'm saying white people, I am talking about the system, the systemic oppression, white privilege, not the individual friends that I have, the individual people who might be mixed with white culture, white heritage, who might be white themselves. I'm not talking directly to them about them, you know. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about um I'm talking about um uh like yeah, that's pretty much all I'm talking about. But I know maybe I shouldn't probably say white because that's not necessarily what I mean. I think it sounds maybe like I bunch people into one group. Like I was raised in a neighborhood that's got a lot of white people. I've got white family members, cousins, aunts, uncles, um really close friends that are white people, you know, uh potentially a soon to be brother-in-law, you know. Um I'm not against white people. The white people I know that are in my life are great, But when I go out in public in the world as like an individual person by myself, I experience things, and that like I don't know, do I have to apologize for it? I mean, like I'm not doing anything. I'm just living my life. So it's like to also not be able to talk about it with people who are friends is kind of like, well, how can I not say, oh, this happened in this place and it just happened to be because I was black and that person was not black? How can I just omit that? I mean, somebody asked me how I am. I'm like, oh, I'm just not going to say it because, it sounds a little racist. And it's like, okay, but it was a little racist. And I wasn't doing the thing that was wrong. So it's kind of like, so it's kind of things like that where I'm like, I know how it sounds, I mean, I don't want people to think that I'm like prejudiced or whatever. Like, that's funny, dude. There's this guy walking. He's walking with his headphones in, and I think he's got literally a freaking Walkman, dude. He is dancing. Not well. Oh, and now he's running. Um, and he was singing too. But anyways, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of one angle. I don't really know how to talk about those types of things. And I try not to change it. I try not to change it just because I'm around the white person or a black person. I try to just say it the way I would say it when I'm around black people. I will talk the same just to keep myself in check, Because I'm like, I'm not saying anything that I wouldn't say, around any group, But, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to talk about different types of prejudice experiences with people who aren't from the same group as you because they get offended and it's like, but you didn't do it. You didn't do that thing to me. I'm not mad at you. I'm just telling you. I'm sharing my experience with you, But I don't want to make people uncomfortable either. But also, if you're being victimized, I don't know. It's such a complicated thing. So I do try to tone it down and not just be all like, oh, white people, like, I love white people, man. I mean, half the people who never meet me think that I'm white. Like, it's just how it is. Like, I know that people get shocked. I've had interviews where I did the interview over the phone, and then they met me, and they're like, "Oh shit!" Like, like I'm like, I know I don't look that weird, and I'm pretty sure the look on their face was because I don't look the color that you thought that I was, do I? You know, like I don't have an address in the part of the city where you think that people look like me live. You know, like I knew exactly what that face was. You know, it's like whatever. It's kind of funny to me. It's like. But if there's not discrimination, then I don't really care. It's just kind of funny. I don't know. Like I've but yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about that kind of thing. I mean, I'm not trying to talk so much about race, but it's kind of like maybe I should change the way I talk about things. I'm debating. I'll see. Like I don't really rant about stuff like that on this podcast. I'm just talking about individually how I speak to my friends, you know, in person or on our phone calls, like the way that I talk to them, you know. And I don't even know how I got on that topic. It's not even what I'm trying to talk about here. But I think the reason why I was mentioning it though is because, you know, when you're around people who are one of you in some way or another, they talk about other groups of people in a way that they're those people are others, you know. So I can have my queer friends and ally friends, and then the way we talk about the homophobic people, the transphobic people, is like, oh, like I can't believe this happened or that happened or this happened or that happened. Like we call it out and we're just like, oh man, I can't believe that, you know. Versus the people who are homophobic or transphobic, I mean, because, you know, race is visible, not always, but race is, you know, my race, the darkness of me is very visible. Like, if you miss it, like, damn, you're either blind or I don't know. It's not possible to miss if you can see, in color. I'm very dark colored, and that's visible. So if somebody wants to make like black jokes or whatever, I mean, I've had people make African jokes that didn't know that I have African parents, you know, African family, a lot of immigrated family, you know, from African countries, and they did not know this, and they were starting to say things about Africans, and I'm like, yo, hand raise over here, you know. I'm kind of African, you know, and it was black people making these jokes, so it's kind of like, you know, black American people making these jokes, and I'm just kind of like, okay, because they think you're one of them, they think you're just the black American, and you're not from that other group, so they can joke about you or make prejudiced remarks or whatever about those groups because you're black, but you're not African, you know. So sometimes when people, what I'm trying to get at with all this rant, let me just get to the point, is that sometimes when people don't know who you are or what you are or how you are, you know, they'll say things and you kind of get some knowledge about them, about how they think and feel. So this definitely has happened to me around homophobic people who don't know that I'm a queer person. I don't know how they don't know, but usually I have some people from my past that, you know, are church people that don't know that part of me. They're either blind or just, they're not up to date with my life. They're not too involved with me. They think that they know me very well, and so they feel comfortable talking to me about any old thing. And the stuff that they say is very prejudiced, you know. They're very prejudiced. And not all of them, but I've heard what they say. I've been there. And I'm just like, oh, I know how you think. And then they'll be like, when my gay friends are there, that they know are gay, they'll be like, oh, you know, they won't say those homophobic remarks. But they'll say them around me because they don't know, you know. And so I've definitely had those experiences. I've definitely had experiences with I think these are normal experiences. Like, I'm not like holding anybody to it. Like, oh, you said that one thing. I mean, I say dumb shit all the time, you know? My mouth just runs. I say stupid shit. I say racist things and sexist things and homophobic things and transphobic things. Like, not like on a regular daily basis, but I'm pretty sure I've said something to offend somebody at some time. I'm quite certain of it. Unfortunately, I mean, it's not on purpose, but I'm quite certain of it. So yeah, and I can call out myself being wrong for things, and you know that it's not right for me to do. Usually it's out of anger or frustration. I don't usually go out of my way to make jokes about people, about their race and stuff. Just, you know, different groups of people are different, and that's fine, you know. I think when it comes to trans people, I've definitely noticed friends who are not trans, who are not allies, pretty much almost every friend except for the few that I've mentioned. I can't mention by name, but the few that I've mentioned have said something or revealed some thoughts about things. And I mean, I don't identify as trans. Looking at me, I don't know what people think I identify as. I think I've definitely noticed in the most and since 2022 and 2023, I've definitely noticed people being a little more like not certain what to call me, ma'am, sir. You know, most people, you know, I've noticed it with like cashiers. I've noticed it with, you know, bartenders. I've noticed it with, you know, they don't say sir, ma'am, whatever. Some of them do, and they get it wrong. Some of them get it right. Some of them just don't know what to say, so they say friend or buddy or hey, fine customer, or like, what's your name, or like, and then they'll just call me by my name, and you know, they don't deal with the he and she and all that. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say, and so they leave it. And I'm like, all right, you know, like, you can just do whatever, say whatever you want, do whatever you want, whatever. But I know how I look when I walk out the door. I'm aware of it. I'm comfortable with it. I'm living my most comfortable life, and I know when people see me, they're like, oh, what? You know, sometimes they don't know what to say. And it's fine, you know, like, it's fine if you don't know what to say. Like, I don't think it matters, you know. And I'm like a living example that it's like you can meet some random person and not know what the hell to say, still provide adequate services, still help them out and help them have a comfortable experience and not make it awkward. To me, it's awkward because I'm like, ah, shit, here I've created another awkward situation again. People just don't know what to say, you know, and it's fine. But I don't know if I've changed the way I look. Maybe it's because I wear caps more. I don't really know. I don't feel like I look less feminine or less masculine or whatever. Like, I think I look pretty even all the way through. I don't know, man, but maybe other people think otherwise. I don't really know. But yeah, when people don't know who you are, they can change their tone, their tune. And so I throw this example out there. Like, I'm not trying to like sway people or be like, I'm right, you're wrong, whatever. But to me, humans are humans. If you're trying your best to be a good human being, you're not stepping on anybody's toes, you're not getting in anybody's way, you're living your best life, If you're in the U.S., you're a tax-paying American citizen, and you're not committing crimes, and you're not, you know, trying to do anything wrong against people, and if you do mess up, you apologize and you learn. I mean, I can't fault anybody on those levels, Like, to me, that's what humans are supposed to be doing. It doesn't matter if you're trans or non-binary or whatever you are, whoever you are. I feel like it should be even throughout. Like, people can do what they want to do. You're not getting in anybody's way. It's fine. That's my opinion on things. But I know that there are plenty of how shall we say, people who, okay, think about I think about it this way. And this I don't know, this might be a hard thing to try to explain to people who might not be part of the culture. And I might have to go into more depth on this in another episode. I don't really know yet. But say if you meet somebody, maybe it's not even a sexual attraction. You're attracted to their personality. They're attractive looking, but maybe you're just not into them or whatever. Keep it simple, because I think once people start thinking sexual attraction, they start freaking out and they can't think past that. So let's not even take it to a sexual level. Let's take it to a level of an intersex person. You don't know this person's intersex. How would you know? There's nothing obvious about the way they look. And there's nothing obvious about anything, but they're an intersex person. And say you're a guy, straight cis male, and you think this other person is straight cis male. You never ask them. They always go by they, them. You never ask them. They never reveal that they're intersex until way down the line. And again, that's nobody's business. But, you go to the bathroom. They use the stall a lot. You go, and do all these things. And then you realize, once they open up to you about it, that they're an intersex person. Does that change your friendship? Does that change your friendship? With the person that is intersex, right? And most people would be like, okay, intersex people, they have maybe not the stereotypical genitalia, either internal or external. It's not exactly what you would see in a textbook kind of scenario, right? It's a little outside of what you would call the norm of genitalia, right? A little outside. I don't know. This is, okay, I don't even want to take it to this level, but I don't know. I feel like this is going to start, okay, this is maybe crossing the line, and I know that I am, because I think it's offensive, but also it's just a question, right? So I think most people, if you would put that scenario with an intersex person, you would never think one way or the other, right? You'd be like, whatever the fuck, I don't really care. You're still my friend. We've known each other all this time. A person being intersex, it's just how they were born. Nobody's gonna refute that. Nobody's gonna, is it refute or dispute? Nobody's gonna argue that a person wasn't biologically born this way, and that's just how they are. You're already friends. Most people are gonna leave it at that, I'm gonna take it to a problematic level. Okay. I don't even want to say this. This is stupid. Okay, so this is where my stupid brain goes, right? And now, mind you, I know I'm not talking about trans people at this moment. I'm talking about a specific genitalia that has nothing to do with if somebody identifies as trans or not. So, most people who have watched pornography know that, there's certain looks to genitalia, right? And there's such thing as what's called a micropenis that's real small. There's such thing as a clit that's really big, right? I mean, if you look at these people, I'm not saying like go watch porn. I'm just saying if you look at just the genitalia of the people, you wouldn't maybe exactly know what they call it themselves. You wouldn't exactly know anything about them based on the genitalia alone, just looking at the genitalia. If you don't know the person, if you don't see their body, and you're just given pictures of micro penises and big clits, and you're like, all right, look at these pictures, tell me about this person. You can't. Like, what would you say? What would you say? You can't tell anybody about a person from just looking at genitalia, right? And most of the time, a person's covered, right? They're usually not running around with their genitalia just like all over the place. Usually, most adults are wearing clothes, right? So you usually wouldn't even know if somebody has a gigantic clit or a really tiny penis. You would never know this unless you're sleeping with this person or something along those lines. You would never know. But, some people are into that and some people are not into that for their own reasons. Now, you wouldn't say that a guy with a micro penis, isn't a man because his penis is too small. Or that a woman with a giant clit isn't a woman because her clit is too big. You wouldn't say that. You would be like, oh, this is big or this is small. This is really big or this is really small, And that would probably be the only differentiation you could really make. If you don't know the personality, you're not hanging out with the people, you don't know anything, you're just given pictures, right? So those are kind of the two things that come to my mind when people start thinking about gender, genitalia, surgical procedures, different people, and their, identity. I mean, I know these are not the same thing. I know intersex people and the things I said about those different types of genitalia, that has nothing really to do with trans people. It's not the same freaking thing at all, I know. But I just say, like, people can understand those things, kind of, and not be like, oh, this is, like, not okay, right? But why is it, if a person identifies as a trans person, now society wants to have a problem with it, right? And I think that's wrong. It's not good. But I also don't understand. Like, I just don't understand it. Because in my head, I'm like, I don't care what size a person's genitalia is. I don't care if they had surgical procedures on their genitalia. I don't care if they were born with some form of genitalia thing going on. So why would I care if they have some other dysphoria going on about their body, about the genitalia they were born with, about body parts that they were born with, about the gender they were assigned at birth? I mean, how is that any different? I don't understand the difference between that and the other mindsets you'd have to have about the other things. Like, I think you can recognize, okay, it's different. This isn't something that maybe you see in, like, every single person you meet every single day. But outside of that, I feel like there's not much more to really be said. And I don't really know how else to word it. That's as best as I can explain what I'm trying to say. I don't know if there really even is a good explanation. But that's kind of what I think. You know, when people are prejudiced, I'm like, are they? You know, like, why do they choose to be prejudiced against, like, why would somebody choose to be prejudiced against a trans person and not against an intersex person? You know? I mean, I know they're not the same, it's not the same thing, but it's like, to me, it's like, well, if you don't know what one person identifies on one end, or maybe it's more like the visibility of it, you know, that it, you know, challenges people's minds too much that aren't used to seeing outside of maybe like the Boy Georges and the, you know, Lady Gagas and, you know, the artist formerly known as Prince and other artists like that, where there's kind of all kinds of things going on at any given time, you know, at any moment. They can kind of, you know, present in a different kind of way. I don't understand why people have a problem with it. I have a really hard time understanding, because it's like, no one's doing anything to you. They're not committing crimes against you. They're not, you know, injuring you in any way. They're not doing anything to you to force you to be uncomfortable. I know there's not a lot of social protocols for, you know, maybe being around trans people. A lot of people, you know, might have this kind of like, you know, they're into like a hyper femme identity, and people that are hyper femme, and so they like to be around that kind of feminine energy and talk about really feminine things, or hyper masculine and really you know, and liking to talk about really masculine, stereotypically masculine topics, you know. I mean, I just don't know. And I'm not trying to even play stupid. Like, I don't understand it. I just don't understand transphobia. But I feel like a lot of what it's like for me to have trans friends or even date trans people is just to be aware of the transphobia, and not even necessarily like the outward transphobia only, but just the way that society just does not welcome trans people, does not, you know, make it comfortable for trans people. There are select cities and select places that kind of like, okay, they'll, you know, it's not all about bathrooms and things like that, but it's like, there are some things that are like basic needs need to be met, you know, like you can't just like never use the bathroom. You know, you can't be in a place where you can never go to the bathroom. Like, that's not going to work. And there are a lot of experiences that are kind of hard to invite somebody to when you know how it's going to be. You know it's going to be a mess. You know it's going to be, you know, the waiters are going to be jerks, and the freaking, this person is going to be a jerk, and that person is going to be a jerk. The wait staff is, you know, the kitchen staff is going to be jerks, and, you know, is somebody going to poison your food or mess up your food because they know that you're on a date with a trans person? You know, is somebody going to, you know, not let you in the store or not sell you something or not help you? Is somebody going to, you know, try to overcharge you or say, oh, look, your card doesn't work, we can't give you the service here? What's going to happen, you know? You never know what's going to happen, you know? Because you're kind of at the mercy of individual businesses, and God only knows, like, every business is so different. And I've probably said this before, like, you know, that I read this book way back called Black Like Me. It's a common book. I'm not the only person who's ever read the thing. It's a movie too. I think you can find it on YouTube. And it's like, this guy basically is black. No, sorry. He's a white guy. And he wants to know what it's like to be black. So a friend of his gives him some kind of medicine that makes his skin dark. And it's a black and white movie. So he looks I mean, he doesn't really look like a black person, but his skin is dark. And he goes through life, not life, but he goes like that for like not even that long. And he has a breakdown. And he's like, I can't believe this. He starts not wanting to go out, and he's just like crying and like upset and just like, he hates the world, you know? And, I mean, I don't know. If people want to know what it's like, I mean, I'm not saying like you can really know what it's like to be a trans person, but you can know what it's like to be around trans people or have some inkling of an experience if you just don't dress according to gender norms and you kind of change it a little bit. I wouldn't recommend this to people because you are putting yourself at risk. I even know that I put myself at risk and I'm not even doing anything, you know, but I already know it. I know it. I already know it. You know, I put job opportunities at risk. I put other opportunities at risk. I put my life at risk. You know, all it takes is coming across one wrong person, dating someone that you care for, or being friends with someone that you care for, or dressing the way that you just want to dress, and it just happens to be wrong for that person, and you get a bullet in your head, or you get, you know, beat up, or end up in the hospital, or whatever. It's not that hard to end up in a place or to be in a risky situation. You know, if guys, cis men who are kind of more mask presenting, if they've never put on a dress before, shave, put on a dress, put on some heels, put on a wig, and walk around for a couple days like that, and see how they get treated. I bet you most guys would never want to do that. And I mean, it can be same for women. I mean, it can be same for women. Cis women who typically are presenting more femme, if they were to kind of mask up their wardrobe, you know, hide their long hair, put on a hat, put on a beanie, dress in like baggy clothes. I mean, not even like try to change your voice or fake facial hair or anything like that. Just they probably look more like a younger boy than they would like a grown man. But even switching up your clothes for like a week, I mean, you see all the shit that comes your way, you know? And a lot of it, I feel like when people do it instantly like that too, it's like the people in their environment are like, what are you doing? Like, people are just going to keep questioning it so much, and just, it draws so much attention, you know? Even if you're not doing it in a way to draw, like, you're not like making your hair all like huge, or like wearing some like outfit that's like, you know, like a penguin suit kind of thing, or anything that would like naturally draw attention, but just the fact that you've changed something about you drastically that's a gender related thing, people get weird. And even if you tell them, hey, I'm just doing an experiment, I want to see what it's like to dress like a dude, or I want to see what it's like to dress like a woman, and see how people react, see how people treat me, the people they know will already treat them differently. The people they don't know, they're going to notice some things about their surroundings, based on their experiences. But I can't encourage people to do that because I already know that they're putting themselves at risk. You definitely will be at risk if you're doing something like that. And that's just if you're doing it for an experiment for a week. You know, I know that if everybody did that, like, for a week, there would be a lot of people who would get killed, who would end up in the hospital, who would end up injured, who would lose their jobs, who would have some kind of academic problem. You know, there'd be all kinds of stuff. Even if people knew that there are people out there doing that for an experiment, it would still put them at risk. Even though you know, even if your job says we don't discriminate, but you never dressed like that before, a lot of jobs would start discriminating against you. They'd be like, what are you doing? And call you into the office and be like, you're disrupting the staff. You can't dress like this. And it's like, why can't you dress like that? Like, I'm not doing anything wrong. If I was a trans person or a non-binary person or someone who just, a type of person who, maybe, more fluid with clothing and things, and maybe one day I wear a dress, maybe one day I wear a suit, and that's just how I am. And I was applying for a job cold and they didn't know me, they'd probably treat me differently than they would treat the person that they already knew, who just all of a sudden decided for a week to wear different stereotypically gendered clothing. And it's stuff like that, like the stuff that I was explaining, all the stuff at the end about like intersex and genitalia and clothing and all that. I know it's not trans. It's not the same thing. I know that. But even just talking about it as a scenario, I think people can kind of get the gist of like, if I were to do this will cause so many problems for my life. I already know, like I was talking to a therapist saying like, yeah, when I go into the women's locker room, I take my hat off so that people know that I'm a woman, because I don't want somebody thinking that I'm some like man walking into the women's locker room. I don't even want, there's like so many crazy experiences that go on. It's not even worth talking about right now, but I'd say overall, like what it's like having trans friends is great. It's a great experience. My trans friends are great. The world around is pretty fucked up. I'll just put it that way. It's nothing that we don't all know. I'm pretty fearful for a lot of the laws coming into action and a lot of the other stuff, and a lot of the people that seemed to some extent to be allies kind of can't seem to get on board. With other stuff. And I don't understand what it is. Maybe it's almost like how people have this fear about dating bisexuals sometimes. People say all kinds of weird stuff like, oh, I don't mind dating bisexual people, but if they left me for someone of the opposite gender, it would devastate me, kind of thing. And I mean, I guess it's valid to them, I don't know, but it is kind of a very generalized thing. It's kind of assuming bi people cheat, and it's also assuming that they're always gonna like, I don't know what it is. I think it's an ego thing that somebody doesn't want them dating the opposite gender because it makes them look bad, maybe. Or they think it makes them look bad, or maybe their friends or family are going to tease them because, like, oh, weren't they dating you and now they're dating a woman, or weren't they dating you and now they're dating a man? Maybe people think about it that way, like, oh, I don't want to get duped by a trans person. I don't know. I've never dated a trans person that wasn't very open about it, though. I think most people are, just because it's dangerous not to be. It's dangerous to be, but it's also dangerous not to be. And I feel like most of the time when I've dated trans people, non-binary people, gender fluid people, all kinds of different gender people, like, a lot of the conversations we have on the first dates are a lot of gender related stuff, a lot of like, okay, we need to get all this stuff out of the way, like, what types of genders do you date? What types of things are you into or not into? And where are we meeting each other? What level are we meeting each other on? Like, I've had dates that had no facial hair, and then the next day they showed up with facial hair, and it's like, that doesn't bother me. That kind of stuff doesn't bother me, but they knew that doesn't bother me. I don't know. I liked the way that they looked. I wasn't like turned off by it at all. I was like, just do. There is no way that person could have become unattractive to me. There's nothing they could have done. a dress, a suit, like whatever the fuck, like clothes, no clothes, I didn't care. I was into them. Like it didn't really matter, you know. But I think not everybody maybe is too comfortable with that. Like they need to know what's what, and they need to know what's up, and they need all the details. And I think a lot of times too, it might be an ego thing. It might be just like, you know, people feel like their own gender maybe is threatened. Their masculinity or their femininity is threatened by some other person who is doing some other thing with their gender. With whatever gender they were assigned at birth. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's like some psychological thing behind it, but I don't know what it is because most of the times people put an argument in front of it and then there's always some like emotional kind of like reaction and there's this debate and this tension and we never really get to the root of like why are people why are some people transphobic? Why are some people homophobic? Why? You know? And I think a lot of times I don't know. Is it wrong to say is there such a thing as sexual fragility? I'm asking the internet, is there such a thing as sexual fragility? I mean, I've heard the term white fragility thrown around, but is there such a thing as sexual fragility? Like a person feels like their sexuality is threatened by somebody who's other, somebody that they don't understand because they're from this minority group of sexuality or gender and they feel like their sexuality is threatened. Because if sexual fragility is a word or a term, then maybe that's what it is. I just don't know. Like, nobody's gonna say that. They're not gonna be like, yeah, I'm sexually fragile. And I'm not trying to, like, judge them and be like, oh, you're fragile and you don't have strength. You know, it's just, what is it? Like, what? Why? Like, I don't know. I need to go eat dinner. I'm recording this at night, and now it's night. But I've gone on and on about this, and I'm just confused about the prejudice aspect of things. Because that's what it's like for me, like, having friends that are trans, dating people that are trans, you know, I have to stay in this hypervigilant mode and make sure I can protect myself and my friend if shit goes down. That's basically the best I can describe it, and I can't really trust. There's a lot of people that the majority of the people I know, I probably wouldn't trust to introduce my trans friends or a trans date to. Very few people in my life that I would be like, oh, I'm dating this person and I'd like you to meet them. Usually, it's not gonna happen. And that bothers me. You know, that bothers me. I think it would be even more so with the trans person, more so problematic than, you know, me dating a woman. Because me dating a woman is like, I feel like even if I know some guys that are homophobic, I feel like even most of the guys who I know who are homophobic will be like, oh, you're both women, so they like that, you know? I don't know, but that's kind of the vibe I get. Like, if I were a man, I think they would treat it differently. But just because I'm a woman, if I brought another woman around, I think they'd be cool with that. The idea of that. Shit. I mean, like, yeah, I've definitely had, like, guy friends, like, proposition the whole, like, oh, well, if you get a girlfriend, let me know. It's like, fuck you. Like, what do you have to do with it? Like, if I get a girlfriend, like you will be the last person who, you won't even meet this person. Like, seriously, like, saying shit like that, I'm just like, oh my god, like, what the fuck kind of thing is that to say? But, you know, they want to be a third or something, and I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, I'm not, like, against necessarily the unicorn hunter types or whatever, threesomes, whatever. I don't really care. I'm not like against that kind of thing. I'm just against it in that context of like, bro, we're friends and this is not some weird like fetish fantasy, like my dating life has nothing to do with your fetishes. Um so I don't know, like, and just for someone to be bold enough to even say that. I've had more than one person say that to me, and I'm no supermodel, okay? I'm not like some person that it's like everybody's trying to bang me or anything. It's not like that in any way. So I'm just like, like you're not even into me. Like I know you're not even into me, and you're already trying to bang my girlfriend that doesn't even exist. Like, come on, man. But I don't know. Like I'm not fetish shaming. I'm just saying like friends. Friends should not say that to other friends. It's weird and it's inappropriate. But yeah, I don't know. I've never had a female friend be like interested in that, like, or I've never had a female friend I don't know, I feel like I don't want to say that most of my female friends are more understanding. That's not true. I don't think that's true. It isn't most of them. Because I have some guy friends that are very understanding too. So I don't want to say most of my female friends. I feel like most of my female friends are pretty comfortable talking about stuff. A lot of my guy friends are too, actually. Like, most of my friends are psych people, so everybody just talks about everything. But I do find it a little... There's just so many weird angles that are just hard to really grasp an idea of what's going on. I don't even know if it's problematic to say things like sexual fragility, because I never really understood like the white fragility. Like I understand what people are getting at when they say that, but for my own personal self, I feel like I'm uncomfortable using that terminology. But I do know what it means, and I do think it exists, but I don't think it's fair to just say it so generalized towards people. Just like it's not so fair to just call somebody a racist. Like, I feel like there's certain terms that are like, you can say somebody has white privilege, but to just start saying they're racist, like, those are two different things. Like, one's based on a system, the other one's based on their own personal beliefs. And so it's kind of like, I don't really think, I don't know, when it comes to like things like white fragility, sexual fragility, even if it does exist, I feel like that's not really something I really want to use that type of terminology about someone. But like, I don't know, I feel like maybe it's disrespectful, but at the same time, maybe that's what's going on to some extent, but I don't really know. I gotta get off of here. I gotta actually get back in the house because it's getting cold. But yeah. I don't know how to make these topics shorter. I feel like this is like 8 topics, so I understand if people aren't gonna listen to this nearly 2-hour long episode, but if you do, thanks. Shout out to all you people who listen to these long ass episodes. But yeah, I just feel like I owe you guys something, the people who stick around and listen all the time. I've been offline for quite a few days on here, and my voice isn't perfect yet, but I mean, it never was, right? So, yeah, but all right, I'm gonna dive more into some of these topics and see if people like them, see if people listen to them, see what you guys think, and see kind of what comes up. Because because I think we need these topics, and I feel like the topics, that I posted before, there was a different political climate and all this stuff. Like, yeah, things were already shitty, but I mean, they're getting shittier. And so I do feel, there's a platform that I speak on, and why not speak about it? Like, it's part of my life too, you know, like, I might potentially settle down with somebody one of these days, and who knows what gender or sexuality they're going to be. Like, I don't know. I can't even predict that. I have no clue where they would be. I have no idea. I really have no idea. But yeah. All right. I'm going to log off here. Thanks for listening.